We are reviewing for our Unit 4 assessment. We're going to be talking about the test that was taken on Friday on page 376 all the way over to page 381. The stories that were read during this time were The Ugly Chuckling and The Ugly Duckling. Your choices, or your skill of the week, I guess I should say, were you were working on comparing and contrasting stories and trying to figure out how they were alike and how they were different. We're going to be reviewing the test in order to get ready for our unit assessment, which will cover these same skills of comparing and contrasting, in addition to discussing how events happen in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story, and how the characters might change over time. For the first page of this, I'm not going to read the stories for you. That's something that you should have already done. We're just going to be reviewing the test. So use what you've learned from reading these stories to respond to these questions. Question 1. This question has 2 parts. First, answer part A, then answer part B. Part A says, both the ugly Chuckling and the ugly Duckling leave their families. How are their reasons for leaving alike? So that's part of our clue words. I'm going to just highlight that because that's super important. How are the reasons for leaving alike? Choice A says, both find it hard to do their work at home. Well, that's not all the way true. The duckling doesn't have any work to do, so I know that can't be true. So I'm going to just put a little X next to that. Both are laughed at by those close to them. I do remember that the siblings laughed at both of them. I'm going to put a check next to that one. For me, that sounds like it could be the right answer. Choice C, both want to escape the cold winter weather. I don't really think that that's correct. The cold weather wasn't really the reason that they were wanting to leave. It had more to do with their feelings. Choice D, both wanted to make new friends. They weren't trying to make new friends. They ended up making some friends along the way, but that wasn't the main goal. And so I wouldn't say that that was the reason that they left. So the only answer choice that makes the most sense is choice B. Part B says, which 2 sentences from the passage shows how the Chuckling and Duckling are alike? Remember, we're choosing 2 from here. So if you only chose 1, you would not get full credit for this answer. It's really important to read all of the aspects of the question. Choice A says, this Chuckling's wheels were too small and narrow. That doesn't really tell me how that they're alike, because the duckling doesn't have any wheels, so it doesn't really make sense that that would show how that they're alike. Choice B says, all of the other Chucklings laughed at her. Well, the duckling did get laughed at, so that makes some sense. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to put a little check over here, but I'm not going to circle it yet. I need to read all of the answers. Choice C says, the duckling walked over to a puddle of water. That doesn't really have anything to do with how they are alike. That does not make sense. Choice D says, the other ducklings at the pond laughed at him. Those are 2 things. So the Chuckling got laughed at and the duckling got laughed at. Both of those show how they are alike. So I'm going to put a check next to that. He was Snow White like the other birds. They both were not Snow White. That doesn't make sense. That's not showing how they are alike. So the only correct choices that do make sense are choice B and choice D. I'm going to look on number 2. How is the ugly duckling different from the ugly Chuckling? Well, there are some differences that I can think of right off the bat, like the setting where they take place is different, but this one is asking how they're actually different, these characters of ugly duckling and ugly Chuckling. Choice A says he's happy with his family. No, I'm sorry, but he doesn't like his family. His family is making him feel really upset. This character is not happy with their family. Choice B says he asks many questions. The ugly duckling asks many questions. I don't think that makes sense. No, they both ask questions, so it's not going to be that. That wouldn't show a difference. The ugly duckling likes the way that he looks. No, he feels really bad about the way that he looks. At the end, he likes the way that he looks, but that's not something that I would say makes the most sense. His looks begin to change. That does make sense because the duckling is a living thing, and so living things grow and change. This is the only answer that makes sense. Choice D. I'm going to just put a little check mark next to that. And we're going to go ahead and move along. I'm going to clear the board and try to move to the next. Boom, there we go. Here we go. Read paragraph 4 of The Ugly Duckling. The winter was long, but finally spring came. One day, the duckling saw a group of beautiful birds. Their feathers were snow white and their necks were long and graceful. What does the word graceful mean in this paragraph? I'm going to just underline where it says graceful, and then I'm going to do that thing where we replace that word as we are reading. Their feathers were snow white and their necks were long and gray. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't give me the same feeling of the name graceful. I do notice that this word has the word full at the end. And so I know graceful means full of grace. Now I just have to figure out what the grace part is. Their feathers were snow white and their necks were long and crooked. No. This is talking about some beautiful birds, and so I would not attribute the crooked to be part of what that means. Choice C, their feathers were snow white and their necks were long and graceful. Graceful meaning beautiful. Their necks were long and beautiful. That makes sense. I also see that word beautiful showed up at the top, so that helps me to think that could definitely be the right answer. Their feathers were snow white and their necks were long and strong. That doesn't give me the same type of a feeling as graceful. Graceful means beautiful, full of beauty and full of grace. I've heard that expression before. Now it makes a little bit more sense to me. We are going to plan our response. The author of these stories has something in common, or each of the stories have something in common, like their plots are very similar. What lesson do you learn in both The Ugly Chuckling and The Ugly Duckling? Plan your response. The author of The Ugly Chuckling wanted to tell the story of the ugly duckling in a new way, and I really like when stories do that and have like an alternate way of expressing the same type of story. Read those stories again to see how they are alike. Make a list of the ways the two stories are the same. This is where I want you to do a secret something real quick. This is where I'm going to ask you, please take out one piece of paper, and this is your secret code for this video lesson. On that piece of paper, I want you to put a swirl. Do a swirl that looks just like this. Put that on your paper. That's going to be your secret code for watching this video. So make a list of, back to this question, number 4, make a list of the ways that the two stories are the same. Well, while I was reading, I was thinking about things that were the same. Like the settings for these two stories were not the same. The Ugly Chuckling, that story was taking place like in a totally different location than the pond that the ducks were at. I wrote down a couple of notes. I'm just grabbing them real quick. So, The Ugly Chuckling said that it took place out west. So I didn't really think that was in common with the pond. The Ugly Chuckling was a girl, and the Ugly Duckling was a boy. So I thought those are some interesting things. But those are things that are different. I need to figure out something that is the same. Well, if I think about this, well, both stories have a character. I want to think about the events. Both of these stories have a character that was laughed at. Both of these stories have a character that was different, and they weren't liked for their differences, and then they end up leaving. So I'm going to write both stories have characters, C-H-A-R-A-C-T-R-S, have characters that leave their homes. Both stories have a character that was laughed at. Both stories, and you just have to think of a few things. It wants you to make a list of ways with the S, so you have to think of like more than one way. Both of the stories, have a character where that wants to find out where they belong. I'm gonna just say both stories have a character that wants to find out where they belong. So those are a couple of ways. You could have done a bulleted list. For me on this, it's easier for me to just type out that on the text. So remember, don't forget that little swirl, and you can just do that on any piece of paper. I'm gonna go ahead and clear this off, and I'm gonna move on to the extended response. So this was just the plan where you write your ideas. We're gonna move on to the extended response. Here we go. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so for your extended response, you're thinking about how these two versions of a story usually have the same lesson. What lesson do you learn in both? The Ugly Chuckling and the Ugly Duckling. Include some of the details that help teach the lesson. So those ideas that I put on the other page are going to be helpful during this time. So my sentence starter, I'm going to just say something like this. And I'm just moving this other little box around. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of driving me a little crazy. All right, so both stories tell the same type of lesson. That kind of sounds pretty good. They tell of a character that does not fit in. They keep on trying to figure out where they belong. So they've got that grit. They keep on trying. They don't want to give up. Both find out that they're special in the end. At the end, so they both have like a happy ending. So I am gonna write like, and there's a happy ending. So both find out that they are special at the end, and there is a happy ending. So both stories are about believing in yourself and just not wanting to give up, and just always to be yourself. So I would even say, let's see, so both stories tell the same type of lesson. They tell of a character that does not fit in. They keep on trying to figure out where they belong. Both find out that they are special at the end, and there is a happy ending. Both versions, I like that because they used that at the top. Both versions of the story are about believing in yourself. And you should have a lot of that. Some of you guys have much better responses than what I come up with. And I really like that you add the extra detail. So it says to include some of those details that help to teach that lesson. Just make sure that your response includes some of that information. Excuse me. For the learning target, how does reading the two versions of the same story help you to see how writers can tell the same story in different ways? I would just expect for you to have written that, let's see. They help me by looking to see how they are alike and how they are different. I look at the characters, the setting, events, and the lesson. Of the stories. So by doing all of that, I see a typo. By doing all of that, you are able to answer that learning target. This is going to get you ready for your Unit 4 assessment. The only other thing that I would say to pay attention to is just how characters change. Sometimes a character might feel really upset at the beginning of the story, and then they might be happy at the end. Like for example, for the ugly duckling, at the beginning he was really upset, and at the end he felt more proud and just had that different personality at the end where he's grown and changed as well. So kind of pay attention to that, and it's really going to help you to be successful going forward on your test, which is going to be for tomorrow. All right, you've got this. Take care.